Why would a mother invite her ex-boyfriend to her child's birthday party, especially when her husband begged her not to? What could possibly push a husband to serve legal papers in front of his entire family right after the cake was cut? This is the story of how a single DNA test turned my life upside down, except, in my mind, I still don't think I did anything wrong. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I stood in our kitchen, stirring June's birthday cake batter with deliberate precision, knowing Owen was watching me from the doorway. The tension between us had been building for weeks, and today I was finally going to resolve it, my way. "Lorraine, we need to talk about the guest list," Owen said, his voice carrying that familiar edge of concern that I'd grown to despise. At 36, my husband had become increasingly paranoid about everything I did, and frankly, it was exhausting. "What about it?" I didn't look up from the mixing bowl. I knew exactly what he wanted to discuss, and I was ready for this fight. "You know what about it? Callum. Why is he on the list?" I finally turned to face him, setting down the wooden spoon with theatrical precision. Owen looked tired. His brown hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, a habit he'd developed whenever he was stressed about something. As a high school teacher, he was used to dealing with difficult situations, but apparently, his own wife was proving more challenging than any teenager. "Because June deserves to have everyone who cares about her at her birthday party," I said, keeping my voice steady and reasonable. "Callum was part of our lives for a long time. It's only natural that he'd want to celebrate with us." "Part of our lives?" Owen's voice rose slightly. "Lorraine, he's your ex-boyfriend from before we got married. Why would he need to be at our daughter's 7th birthday party?" I sighed dramatically, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Owen, you're being ridiculous. Callum and I are friends. We've been friends for years. Just because we dated briefly doesn't mean we can't maintain a healthy friendship for June's sake." "For June's sake?" Owen stepped into the kitchen, his face flushed. "June barely knows him. She's met him maybe 3 times in her entire life." "That's exactly why this is important," I said, warming to my argument. "She should know the people who care about her family. Callum has always been interested in how she's doing, asking about her school, her activities. He's practically family." Owen stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. "Practically family? Lorraine, listen to yourself. The man is your ex-boyfriend. I'm your husband. June is our daughter. There is no reason for him to be at her birthday party." "You're being controlling," I said, my voice taking on a hurt tone. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You can't handle the fact that I have male friends. You're so insecure that you can't even let me invite someone to a child's birthday party without making it into some kind of conspiracy." The kitchen door swung open, and Owen's mother, Marion, walked in carrying grocery bags. At 61, she was still sharp as a tack and had never particularly warmed to me, though she'd always been polite. Today, however, her expression was particularly cold. "What's all the shouting about?" she asked, setting the bags on the counter. "Owen doesn't want me to invite Callum to June's party," I explained, making sure my voice carried just the right amount of wounded innocence. "He thinks it's inappropriate for me to have male friends." Marion's eyebrows shot up. "Callum? Your ex-boyfriend Callum?" "See?" Owen gestured toward his mother. "Even Mum thinks it's weird." "I think it's more than weird," Marion said, unpacking groceries with sharp, precise movements. "I think it's completely inappropriate. Why on earth would you want your ex-boyfriend at your daughter's birthday party?" "Because I'm trying to create a healthy, open environment for June," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I don't want her growing up thinking that men and women can't be friends, or that marriage means cutting off all your other relationships. That's not the kind of lesson I want to teach her." "The lesson you're teaching her," Marion said, her voice deadly quiet, "is that marriage vows don't mean anything, that boundaries don't matter, that her father's feelings are irrelevant. I felt my cheeks flush with anger. That's completely unfair. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm trying to maintain a friendship with someone who's been part of my life for years. If Owen can't handle that, then maybe the problem isn't with me. Owen's father, Everett, chose that moment to wander into the kitchen, probably drawn by the raised voices. At 64, he was the family peacemaker, always trying to smooth over conflicts before they got out of hand. "What's going on in here?" he asked, looking between the three of us with concern. "Lorraine wants to invite her ex-boyfriend to June's birthday party," Marion explained tersely. Everett's face went through several expressions before settling on diplomatic confusion. "Well, that's unusual. Is there a particular reason?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Because I'm an adult who can maintain friendships with people regardless of their gender or our past relationship. Because I want June to see that her mother isn't controlled by jealousy and insecurity. And because Callum specifically asked if he could come celebrate with June. And I'm not going to hurt his feelings, just because my husband can't handle having him around." "He asked to come?" Owen's voice was dangerously quiet. "Yes, he did. He called last week and said he'd love to help celebrate June's birthday. He even offered to bring a gift. He's been keeping track of her interests, and he thought she might like a new art set since she's been getting into drawing." The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Owen stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, while Marion looked like she was ready to explode. Everett just looked sad. "Lorraine," Owen said finally, "when exactly did Callum call you?" "Last Tuesday, I think, or maybe Wednesday. Does it matter?" "You didn't mention that he called." I shrugged. "I mention a lot of things you don't seem to listen to. Besides, it was just a quick conversation about the party. Nothing worth reporting." "Nothing worth reporting," Owen repeated slowly. "Your ex-boyfriend calls you to ask about our daughter's birthday party, and you don't think that's worth mentioning to your husband." "You're twisting this into something it's not," I said, my voice rising. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so paranoid and controlling that I can't even have a normal conversation without you making it into some kind of betrayal." My sister Sibylle chose that moment to breeze through the back door, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing a sundress that was probably too short for a child's birthday party. At 29, she'd never been married and had strong opinions about how marriage trapped women into giving up their independence. "Hey, everyone," she said brightly, then paused as she took in the tense atmosphere. "Whoa, what's with all the long faces? It's a party day." "Owen doesn't want me to invite Callum," I explained, grateful to have an ally. "He thinks it's inappropriate for married women to have male friends." Sibylle rolled her eyes dramatically. "Seriously? Owen, come on. It's 2023. Women can have friends. It's not the 1950s. "It's not about having friends," Owen said through gritted teeth. "It's about boundaries. It's about respect. It's about the fact that most married people don't invite their ex-boyfriends to family events." "Most married people are probably boring," Sibylle said with a laugh. "Lorraine, you should invite whoever you want. It's your house too." I smiled gratefully at my sister. "Thank you. At least someone understands that I'm not doing anything wrong." "You're not doing anything wrong," Sibylle agreed, shooting a challenging look at Owen. "You're maintaining healthy relationships and refusing to be controlled by jealousy." Marion made a sound that might have been a snort. "Healthy relationships, is that what we're calling it?" "What's that supposed to mean?" I demanded. "It means," Marion said, turning to face me fully, "that I've been married for 38 years, and I've never once felt the need to invite any of my ex-boyfriends to family events. It means that when you get married, you make certain commitments, and one of those commitments is putting your spouse's feelings above your ex-boyfriend's feelings." "That's old-fashioned thinking," Sibylle interjected. "Marriage should be about trust and freedom, not about cutting yourself off from the world." "Trust," Owen said quietly, "goes both ways. And right now, I'm having a hard time understanding why my wife's ex-boyfriend's feelings are more important than mine." I felt a surge of frustration. "They're not more important, but they're equally valid. Callum is a good person who cares about our family. He's been nothing but supportive and friendly. If you could get past your insecurity for 5 minutes, you might actually like him." "I don't want to like him," Owen said. "I want him to not be at my daughter's birthday party." "Well, that's too bad," I said, my patience finally snapping, "because I already invited him, and he's already said yes, and I'm not going to uninvite him just because you can't handle your jealousy." The kitchen fell silent again. Owen looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I see," he said, "so the decision's already made." "The decision was made when I decided to maintain healthy adult relationships instead of living in a bubble of paranoia," I said. Owen turned and walked toward the kitchen door. "I need some space," he said without looking back. "Owen," Everett called after him, but Owen was already gone. We heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of his office door closing. I turned back to the cake batter, feeling vindicated but also slightly shaken. "He'll get over it," I said, more to myself than to anyone else. "Will he?" Marion asked quietly. I looked up to find her watching me with an expression that was hard to read. "Of course he will. He's just being dramatic." Marion didn't respond, just continued unpacking groceries in silence. Sibylle squeezed my shoulder supportively. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "Don't let them guilt you into giving up your independence." I smiled at her, grateful for the support. But as I continued stirring the cake batter, I couldn't shake the feeling that Owen had looked different when he left the kitchen. Not angry, exactly. More like determined. I pushed the thought away. Owen would come around, he always did. And once he saw how normal and friendly the interaction with Callum was, he'd realize he'd been worried about nothing. What I didn't know was that upstairs in his office, Owen was making a phone call that would change everything. The next morning at my insurance office, I tried to focus on processing claims, but my mind kept drifting back to the kitchen confrontation. My phone buzzed with a text from Callum. "Looking forward to Saturday. Should I bring anything besides the art set?" I smiled as I typed back, "Just yourself. Can't wait for you to see how much June has grown." "Everything okay over there?" I looked up to see my coworker Janet standing by my cubicle, holding a coffee mug and wearing a concerned expression. Janet had worked at the insurance firm for 15 years and had an uncanny ability to sense office drama from 3 cubicles away. "Just family stuff," I said, quickly closing my phone. "You know how it is." "Actually, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about," Janet said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I was at the grocery store yesterday, and I ran into Linda Morrison. You know, her son goes to the same school as June." I felt a small knot form in my stomach. "Okay?" "Well, she mentioned that she'd heard some interesting things about June's upcoming birthday party. Something about you inviting an ex-boyfriend." The knot tightened. People need to mind their own business. "Hey, I'm not judging," Janet said quickly. "I just thought you should know that people are talking. You know how this town is. Once the gossip mill gets started—" "Let them talk," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Janet nodded, but her expression remained concerned. "Of course not. I just... be careful, okay? Sometimes things can get blown out of proportion." After Janet walked away, I found it hard to concentrate on work. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Owen. "Can you meet me for lunch today? We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "I'm busy. Can it wait until tonight?" "It's important." "So is my work. Tonight, Owen." I put my phone in my desk drawer and tried to focus on the claim in front of me, but the words kept blurring together. Why was everyone making such a big deal about this? I was inviting a friend to a birthday party. People did that all the time. My phone buzzed again, but this time it was in my drawer, so I ignored it. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang. Owen's name appeared on the screen. "What?" I answered, not bothering to hide my irritation. "I'm coming to pick you up early today," Owen said. His voice was calm, which somehow made me more nervous than if he'd been yelling. Why? Because we need to talk, and you keep putting me off. I'm not putting you off, I'm working. Some of us have jobs that require focus. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Owen, I can't just leave work early because you're having some kind of emotional crisis. 20 minutes, Lorraine. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, feeling a surge of panic that I couldn't quite explain. Why was I panicking? I hadn't done anything wrong. Owen was just being his usual controlling self. I quickly pulled my phone out of my drawer and deleted my text conversation with Callum, not because there was anything inappropriate in it, but because Owen was clearly in some kind of paranoid state, and I didn't want to give him more ammunition for his jealousy. Then I deleted Callum's number entirely and cleared my call log. Again, not because I was hiding anything, but because Owen was obviously looking for reasons to be upset, and I didn't want to fuel his insecurity. 19 minutes later, Owen appeared in the office lobby. He was wearing his teaching clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt, but something about his posture was different, more rigid, more purposeful. "Ready?" he asked when I approached. "I still have an hour left on my shift." I already called and explained that we had a family emergency. "We have a family emergency?" "We have a family conversation that's been postponed long enough." The drive home was silent. I kept glancing at Owen, trying to read his expression, but his face was carefully neutral. It was the same expression he wore when dealing with particularly difficult students, patient but implacable. "Owen, if this is still about Callum, it's about a lot of things," he said quietly. When we got home, Owen led me into the living room and gestured for me to sit on the couch. He remained standing, which immediately put me on the defensive. "This feels very formal," I said, trying to inject some lightness into the situation. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," Owen said, "and I've been thinking about a lot of other things too." "Such as?" "Such as the fact that you've been working late a lot recently. Such as the fact that you've been getting phone calls that you take in private. Such as the fact that you just invited your ex-boyfriend to our daughter's birthday party without consulting me." I felt my cheeks flush. "I work late because I have a demanding job. I take private phone calls because sometimes I want to have conversations that aren't monitored by my husband. And I invited Callum because he's a friend who cares about our family." "When was the last time you worked late?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know. Last week sometime." "Wednesday?" "Maybe. Why does it matter?" "Because I called your office Wednesday night at 7:30 to see if you needed me to pick up dinner. They said you'd left at 5. My heart started beating faster. I must have stopped somewhere on the way home. I don't remember every detail of my schedule, Owen. "Where did you stop?" "I don't know. Maybe the grocery store, maybe the pharmacy. Why are you interrogating me like I'm some kind of criminal?" Owen studied my face for a long moment. "I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking questions that any husband might ask when his wife's story doesn't add up. My story adds up fine. You're just looking for problems where none exist." "Am I?" The way he said it, so calm, so certain, sent a chill down my spine. "Yes, you are. You're being paranoid and controlling, and frankly, it's starting to affect our marriage." "Our marriage," Owen repeated. "Tell me about our marriage, Lorraine. Tell me about the vows we made. Tell me about the promises we made to each other." "What is this? Some kind of therapy session? I know what vows we made." "Do you?" "Because one of those vows was about forsaking all others, about putting each other first, about being honest with each other." I stood up, feeling cornered. "I have been honest with you. I've been completely honest. The fact that you can't handle me having male friends is your problem, not mine." "Male friends," Owen said. "Is that what Callum is?" "Yes, that's exactly what he is. And that's all he's ever been, since we got married." The question hung in the air between us. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and one wrong word would send me tumbling over. "Of course that's all he's been," I said. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking direct questions and hoping for direct answers." Well, you're getting them. Callum is a friend. He's been a friend for years. The fact that we dated briefly before I met you doesn't change that. Owen nodded slowly. Okay, so if he's just a friend, you won't mind if I call him and talk to him myself, man to man, just to clear the air before the party. My blood turned to ice. You want to call Callum? Why not? If he's such a good friend of the family, I should probably get to know him better. That's not necessary. I mean, you'll meet him at the party. But I'd like to talk to him beforehand. Maybe invite him over for dinner this week. Really get to know him. Owen, that's crazy. You don't need to. Why is it crazy? If he's going to be around our daughter, shouldn't I know what kind of person he is? I felt trapped. Every response I could think of sounded suspicious, even to me. Fine, I said finally. Call him if you want. I don't care. Great, what's his number? I don't have it memorized. It's in my phone. Can I see your phone? Why do you need to see my phone? To get Callum's number, so I can call him. My mouth felt dry. I'll get it for you later. I need to use the bathroom. I practically ran upstairs, my heart pounding. In the bathroom, I pulled out my phone and realized with growing horror that I'd deleted everything related to Callum. If Owen asked to see my phone now, the fact that I'd deleted everything would look incredibly suspicious. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I could say I deleted his number because Owen had been so upset about the party invitation. Maybe I could frame it as trying to keep the peace. When I came back downstairs, Owen was standing exactly where I'd left him. Did you get the number? He asked. Actually, I deleted it, I said, trying to sound casual. After yesterday's fight, I thought maybe it would be better if I didn't have direct contact with him. You know, to avoid any more conflict. Owen stared at me for a long moment. You deleted his number. Yes. But he's still coming to the party. Yes, I mean, I already invited him. I can't uninvite him now. That would be rude. But you can't contact him to confirm details, or to let him know what time to come, or what June might like as a gift. I felt the walls closing in. I'll figure it out. Maybe I can get his number from someone else. Who else has his number? I don't know. Maybe Sabine. Owen nodded slowly. Maybe Sabine. The conversation felt like it was spiraling out of control, but I couldn't figure out how to stop it. Every answer I gave seemed to create new questions, new problems. Owen, I feel like you're trying to trap me into saying something wrong. I'm not hiding anything from you. I just want to have a nice birthday party for our daughter. So do I, Owen said. That's all I want. But something in his voice suggested that wasn't all he wanted. Something in his voice suggested that this conversation was far from over. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, sunny and warm, ideal for a backyard birthday party. I spent the morning decorating, hanging streamers and setting up tables, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Owen was helping, but he'd been strangely quiet all week, going about his daily routine with mechanical precision. The cake looks beautiful, Marion said, carrying plates from the kitchen to the backyard table. She'd been polite but distant since our confrontation, and I could feel her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. Thank you, I replied, adjusting the tablecloth for the third time. I think June's going to love it. June herself was upstairs getting dressed, excited about her party, but also seeming to sense the tension between her parents. She'd been quieter than usual all week, spending more time in her room and less time chattering about her friends and school. The first guests arrived at 2:00, mostly families from June's school, parents I knew casually from pick-up and drop-off. Everyone seemed cheerful and relaxed, and I started to feel like maybe the party would go smoothly after all. Then, at 2:30, Callum arrived. He looked exactly like I remembered, tall, athletic, with the kind of easy smile that had first attracted me to him years ago. He was wearing jeans and a casual button-down shirt, and he carried a beautifully wrapped present that was obviously the art set he'd mentioned. "Lorraine," he said, giving me a warm hug that lasted just a moment too long. You look fantastic. Marriage definitely agrees with you. I felt several pairs of eyes on us and stepped back quickly. Callum, I'm so glad you could make it. June's going to be thrilled. Owen appeared at my side so suddenly that I jumped. You must be Callum, he said, extending his hand. I'm Owen, June's father. Owen, great to finally meet you, Callum said, shaking Owen's hand with enthusiasm. Lorraine's told me so much about you. Has she? Owen's voice was perfectly polite, but I caught the edge underneath. That's interesting, because she's told me almost nothing about you. An uncomfortable silence fell over our little group. I could see other parents glancing our way, their conversations becoming more subdued. Well, I said brightly, let me introduce you to everyone else, Callum. I led him around the backyard, making introductions and trying to act as if having my ex-boyfriend at my daughter's birthday party was the most natural thing in the world. But I could feel the stares, hear the whispered conversations that stopped when I got too close. So how do you know the family? Asked Linda Morrison, the woman Janet had mentioned seeing at the grocery store. Lorraine and I go way back, Callum said with that charming smile. We've been friends for years. How nice, Linda said, but her tone suggested she found it anything but nice. And I'm a fitness instructor, Callum said. I run a gym downtown. How interesting. And you keep in touch with all your old friends? I could see where this was heading and jumped in quickly. Callum's been wonderful about staying connected with our family. It's so rare to find people who really care about maintaining friendships over the years. Linda nodded politely, but I caught her exchanging a meaningful look with another parent. My cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. These people were being incredibly rude, acting like there was something scandalous about a simple friendship. Mummy, who's that? June appeared at my side, looking up at Callum with curiosity. This is Callum, sweetheart. He's an old friend of Mommy's, and he wanted to come celebrate your birthday with you. Hi, June, Callum said, crouching down to her level. I brought you something special. I heard you like to draw. June's eyes lit up as she looked at the wrapped present. Can I open it now? Of course, I said, grateful for the distraction. Let's go over to the present table. The art set was beautiful. Professional quality colored pencils, sketch pads, and even a small easel. June was delighted, and for a moment I felt vindicated. This was exactly what I'd wanted, a friend caring about my daughter and bringing joy to her special day. This is amazing, June said, hugging the easel. Thank you. You're very welcome, Callum said. Maybe sometime I can come over and you can show me some of your artwork. I felt Owen stiffen beside me. That's very kind of you, he said carefully, but June's usually pretty busy with school and her regular activities. Of course, Callum said quickly. I just meant, well, if the opportunity ever came up. The conversation was interrupted by Sabile's arrival. She swept into the backyard, wearing a sundress that was definitely too short for a children's party, and immediately zeroed in on Callum. You must be the famous Callum, she said, extending her hand with a flirtatious smile. I'm Sabile, Lorraine's sister. The pleasure's all mine, Callum said, and I felt a stab of irritation at how his eyes lingered on her figure. Sabile, could you help me with the drinks? I asked pointedly. In a minute, she said, not taking her eyes off Callum. I want to hear all about how you and my sister know each other. We're old friends, Callum said, but there was something in his tone, a hint of shared secrets, that made my stomach clench. Just friends? Sabile asked with a knowing smile. Sabile, I said sharply, but she ignored me. I mean, it's so sweet that you've stayed close all these years. Not everyone can maintain that kind of connection. I wanted to grab my sister and shake her. She was making everything worse, turning what should have been a simple friendship into something that sounded secretive and inappropriate. Owen excused himself and walked away, heading toward where his parents were standing near the house. I watched him go, noting the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. He seems tense, Callum observed, following my gaze. He's been working too hard, I said quickly. You know how teachers are at the end of the school year. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Owen's tension had nothing to do with work and everything to do with the man standing next to me. The party continued, but the atmosphere felt strained. Parents clustered in small groups, their conversations too quiet and their glances too frequent. June seemed to be having fun, but even she appeared to sense that something was off. When it came time to cut the cake, I called everyone together, hoping that the familiar ritual would restore some normalcy to the gathering. June stood in front of her cake, beaming as everyone sang "Happy Birthday," and for a moment, I felt like maybe everything would be okay. "Make a wish, sweetheart," I said, lighting the candles. June closed her eyes tight, made her wish, and blew out all 7 candles in one breath. Everyone applauded, and I began cutting slices of cake, grateful for the distraction. "This is delicious," Callum said, appearing at my elbow with his plate. "Did you make it yourself?" "I did. It's June's favorite, chocolate with vanilla frosting." "You always were talented in the kitchen," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "I remember that chocolate chip cookies you used to make, the ones with the secret ingredient." My hand stilled on the cake knife. The secret ingredient had been cinnamon, and I'd only ever told one person about it. The memory of lazy Sunday mornings in Callum's apartment, baking cookies, and talking about our future, hit me like a physical blow. "That was a long time ago," I said quietly. "Not that long ago," he replied, and there was something in his voice that made me look up at him sharply. Our eyes met, and for just a moment, I felt the old connection, the spark that had drawn us together years ago. Then I remembered where I was, remembered the dozens of people watching us, remembered my husband and daughter. "I should finish serving the cake," I said, looking away. "Of course," Callum said, but he didn't move away immediately. "Lorraine, I'm glad you invited me today. It means a lot to be included in June's celebration." "It's just a birthday party," I said, but my voice sounded shaky even to my own ears. "Is it?" he asked quietly. Before I could respond, Owen appeared beside us. "Lorraine, can I talk to you for a minute? Privately?" The way he said it, polite but firm, made several nearby conversations stop. I could feel people watching us, waiting to see what would happen next. "I'm in the middle of serving cake," I said, not looking at him. "It can wait a few minutes." "Actually, it can't. Our guests are waiting." "Our guests can serve themselves cake for 5 minutes while we have a conversation." The tension in his voice was unmistakable now, and I could see parents exchanging glances, their expressions ranging from curious to uncomfortable. "Owen, you're making a scene," I said quietly. "I'm asking my wife to step aside for a private conversation. If that's making a scene, then so be it." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. "This is neither the time nor the place for whatever you want to discuss." "When is the time, Lorraine? When is the place? Because every time I try to talk to you, you tell me it's not convenient." "Because you're being ridiculous," I said, my voice rising slightly. "You're acting jealous and controlling over a simple friendship, and frankly, it's embarrassing." The backyard had gone almost completely quiet now. Even the children had stopped playing, sensing the adult drama unfolding around them. "Embarrassing," Owen repeated. "Yes, I suppose it is." He looked around at our guests, at the curious faces and uncomfortable expressions, at June standing by her cake with confusion written all over her 7-year-old face. "You're absolutely right," he said. "This is embarrassing." Then he turned and walked toward the house, leaving me standing by the cake table with every eye in the backyard focused on me. "Well," Sabine said, appearing at my side, "that was dramatic." "He's being impossible," I muttered, continuing to cut cake with shaking hands. "Men," she said dismissively, "they can't handle it when women have any independence." But as I looked around at our guests, at their carefully neutral expressions, and the way they seemed to be avoiding eye contact, I realized that not everyone saw it that way. In fact, judging by their faces, most of them seemed to think Owen's reaction was perfectly understandable. The realization hit me like a cold wave. I wasn't the victim here, at least not in their eyes. I was the woman who had invited her ex-boyfriend to her daughter's birthday party and then publicly dismissed her husband's concerns. I was the one who looked inappropriate, not Owen. The party continued, but the mood never recovered. Parents made polite conversation and supervised their children, but there was an undercurrent of awkwardness that persisted until the last guest left. Callum was among the last to go, lingering by the back gate as I cleaned up plates and cups. "Thank you for inviting me," he said. "I know it wasn't easy." "It shouldn't have been difficult at all," I replied, not looking at him. "Lorraine," he said quietly, "if my being here caused problems between you and Owen, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention." "Your being here didn't cause problems," I said firmly. "Owen's insecurity caused problems." Callum nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "Still, maybe next time." "There will be a next time," I said, finally looking at him. "I'm not going to let jealousy dictate who I can and can't be friends with." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Okay. Well, give June my love, and tell her I hope she enjoys the art set." After he left, I continued cleaning up in silence. Owen was nowhere to be seen, and June had gone inside to play with her new toys. Marion and Everett helped with the cleanup, but they were both unusually quiet. "That was quite a party," Marion said finally, folding up a tablecloth. "Yes, it was," I replied curtly. June seemed to enjoy herself. "She did." Marion paused in her folding. "Lorraine, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you think what happened today was fair to June?" I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean the tension, the arguing, the way her birthday party became about adult drama instead of about celebrating her. Do you think that was fair to her?" I felt a surge of anger. The only person who created drama was Owen. If he had just acted like a mature adult. "A mature adult," Marion interrupted, "doesn't invite their ex-boyfriend to their child's birthday party when their spouse has explicitly asked them not to. A mature adult doesn't try to control who their spouse can be friends with." Marion studied my face for a long moment. "Is that really what you think this is about? Friendship?" "Yes, that's exactly what I think this is about." She nodded slowly, then resumed folding the tablecloth. "I see." But the way she said it suggested she saw a great deal more than I was comfortable with. As the sun set and the last of the cleanup was finished, I found myself alone in the backyard, surrounded by the debris of what should have been a joyful celebration. Instead, it felt like the aftermath of a battle, one that I wasn't entirely sure I had won. Monday morning at the coffee shop near June's school was usually a pleasant part of my routine. I'd drop June off, then grab a latte, and maybe chat with other parents before heading to work. It was a small ritual that made me feel connected to the community, part of the social fabric of our neighborhood. Today, however, the atmosphere felt different the moment I walked in. Conversations seemed to quiet as I approached the counter, and I caught several parents glancing in my direction before quickly looking away. Linda Morrison was sitting at a corner table with 3 other mothers, their heads bent together in the kind of intense conversation that screamed gossip. I ordered my usual latte and tried to act casual, checking my phone while I waited. But I could feel eyes on me, and when the barista called my name, the entire coffee shop seemed to go silent for a moment. "Lorraine!" I turned to see Amanda Chen, another school parent, waving me over to her table. Amanda had always been friendly, and I felt a surge of relief at seeing a welcoming face. "Hi, Amanda," I said, sliding into the chair across from her. "How was your weekend?" "Oh, the usual chaos," she said with a laugh. "Speaking of weekends, I heard June had a lovely birthday party on Saturday." There it was. I could hear the curiosity in her voice, the careful way she was probing for information. "She did," I said carefully. She had a wonderful time. That's great. I'm sorry we couldn't make it. Emma had a soccer tournament, but I heard it was quite the gathering. Just a typical kids' party. Cake, games, presents. You know how it is. Amanda nodded, but her expression suggested she knew it had been anything but typical. I ran into Linda Morrison at the grocery store yesterday, and she mentioned meeting some of your friends. She said you have quite an interesting social circle. I felt my cheeks flush. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, nothing negative, Amanda said quickly. She just mentioned that you'd invited some old friends, people from before you were married. She thought it was refreshing. The way she said refreshing made it clear that Linda had used a very different word. I believe in maintaining friendships, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't think marriage should mean cutting yourself off from everyone you knew before. Of course not, Amanda agreed. Although I have to admit, I don't really keep in touch with any of my exes. But then again, most of my relationships before meeting David were pretty forgettable. She laughed, but there was something pointed about the comment. I realized with growing horror that she knew. Somehow Linda Morrison had figured out that Callum was my ex-boyfriend, and now it was spreading through the parent network like wildfire. Well, I said, standing up abruptly, I should get to work. Of course, Amanda said. Give my love to June, and tell Owen I said hi. The emphasis on Owen's name at the coffee shop felt like a slap, as if the other mothers were reminding me I had a husband I was supposed to be loyal to. I left furious, convinced they were just small-minded gossips who envied my confidence. At lunch, I called Sabine, and she fed exactly what I wanted to hear. They were jealous. Owen was insecure. I wasn't doing anything wrong. By the time I got home, I'd fully decided I was the victim in all this. That evening, Owen told me Principal Martinez had called. Rumors were spreading that I was having an affair. He said he wanted to believe me, but from the outside it looked bad, inviting my ex to June's party, being defensive, acting secretive. Then he asked the question that froze my blood. Would I agree to a DNA test for June? I exploded, accused him of letting bored parents poison his mind, insisted there was nothing going on with Callum, and that we were just friends. Owen watched me carefully, asked one last time if there was anything he should know, and I doubled down on the lie. He smiled, a cold, knowing smile, and calmly said he'd arrange the test. I told myself it didn't matter. The results would clear me. What I didn't know was that he'd recorded the entire conversation, and my hesitation, defensiveness, and too loud denial told him more than any rumor ever could. The DNA test for June was booked for Thursday, and Lorraine was sure it would clear her and prove Owen was just paranoid. Even her mother, Nora, said the whole thing was ridiculous and that a husband should trust his wife. They went to the lab in tense silence, did the mouth swabs, and waited. 5 days later, during dinner, the lab called. On speaker, the technician calmly said the words that shattered everything. Owen was excluded as June's biological father. Probability of paternity, 0%. Owen immediately stepped into father mode with June, telling her he loved her no matter what, then sent her back to watch TV and turned to Lorraine. She tried to insist she'd believed June was his, that it had just been complicated, and that her affair with Callum had only happened a few times when she felt lonely and neglected. Owen pushed past the excuses. She'd been sleeping with both of them, she'd lied for 7 years, and she'd invited Callum into their home as a friend. Then he revealed the envelope he'd already prepared. Divorce papers, filed that very morning. Calmly, he laid out the reality. He had text logs, phone records, bank statements, security footage, and hotel receipts tying her to Callum. He was asking for primary custody, the house, and had already frozen their joint accounts on his lawyer's advice. When she begged him not to destroy their family, he told her she'd done that years ago. He was just documenting the wreckage and finally acting on it. 3 days after Owen served me with divorce papers, I sat in a lawyer's office, hearing how badly I'd ruined my own life. She explained that Owen had built a strong case. Evidence of adultery, lies about money, hotel visits with my ex, Callum, and even audio recordings, where I denied everything on the same night he asked for a DNA test. He had phone records, bank statements, GPS, security footage, 2 months of quiet documentation that made me look like a dishonest wife and an unstable parent. She told me fighting for custody would likely expose everything in court and online, where June could one day read it, and advised me to accept his offer. He keeps the house and primary custody. I get my car, a portion of savings, and visitation every other weekend plus 1 evening a week. That night I went to Owen and finally told him the full truth. The emotional affair that became physical, the overlapping intimacy, the doubt about June's paternity, the secret meetings at the Marriott to talk. He listened, said he respected my honesty, but our marriage was still over because I'd lied for 7 years. The divorce went through, I moved into a small apartment, and June stayed with him. Callum, when he learned the DNA results, wasn't interested in being a father. Watching Owen lovingly support June at her school play months later, I finally understood. I wasn't a victim of a controlling husband. I was the architect of my own destruction. Owen hadn't destroyed me. He had simply refused to keep living inside my lie, and the life I lost was the price of my choices.